What's up, Flannelverse? Apologies for the late start, having some technical difficulties with my camera, but seems like we're good to go, at least for now. Good to see several of you in here already. Michael in here several hours ago. Yes, my Vikings are for real. Really excited about how well Sam Darnold has played today. Had a friend who got me really scared. I thought Sam Darnold might have suffered like a season-ending injury. I was not watching the play live when he got hurt. I just saw people's reaction to it, and I was like, "Oh no, we lost Sam Darnold." He's good to go though. That was good to see. Joe Willow says, "If you're already here, day probably isn't going well." Sadly, yeah, my day not going that great either. Which I had like 50% of Romo Dunze. Thought that might be enough to get me in for a positive day. Not looking like that is going to be the case. I think I'm a little bit overweight to Jawan Jennings, but just didn't put it together overall. Galaxy brain a little bit too much with Gardner Minshew and that stack today. I think that one hurt me a little bit. What's up, guys? Good to see all of you in here. Lock in Pitts is Antoine. I don't know about I'm locking him in, but we have seen tight ends just tear apart that Kansas City defense. So maybe you're right. We'll go position by position here: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers, and then at the end, I'll take any more questions you have. I'll try to build a couple lineups, see how it goes. Yeah, Jawan Jennings working out. I mean, I don't think anybody was anticipating this kind of a game for Jawan Jennings. You're open for 20 fantasy points. Like that was kind of the when you put Jawan Jennings in your lineup, that's what you're really like, okay, maybe he can get me 20 fantasy points. Today was absolutely insane. So good for him. All right, we'll start with quarterbacks. Actually, let me give one shout out. My guy Dark Sheep is already has one ticket to the Dog Bowl on Underdog. Last I saw is in third place. So keeping my fingers crossed, cheering for you, Dark Sheep. Really good guy. And of course already has one ticket, but hopefully he gets another one to the Dog Bowl on Underdog. All right, we're going to go ahead on DraftKings here, and we will start with quarterbacks as usual. Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, of course, the quarterbacks on this slate. Patrick Mahomes, you know who he is. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Kind of thought he was going to take a big step forward this year in terms of fantasy scoring. Last year, a little bit down. They just didn't really throw the ball as much as you kind of hoped. And the defense is really good, so they didn't really need to. I kind of thought coming into this year that he was maybe going to be throwing a little bit more, better weapons on offense with Xavier Worthy there. Of course, we thought Hollywood Brown was going to be there, so lost one of those weapons before the season even started. And then also thought the defense was going to take a step back without L'Jarius Sneed there. That hasn't really been the case. They've been really good this year also. Maybe really good is an overstatement, but they've been a pretty solid defense anyway. And Patrick Mahomes just hasn't really been taking that big step forward or retro like step backward to what he used to be. He's been, I think, 15 fantasy points per game so far this year. Don't love to see that. Does run a little bit, doesn't run a ton. I still think in a single game slate, I'm going to make the bet on Mahomes being somebody that you're going to want in your lineup a lot of the time. I'm probably not going to be having 80% Patrick Mahomes, but I would guess I have him in over 50% of my lineups. I do think that he is a very strong play, as always. I don't know if there's much that needs to be said about Patrick Mahomes. You know what you're getting out of Patrick Mahomes. Could have 4 passing touchdowns and 300 yards. Could also just run the ball a lot more. That's another, I guess. Another thought is Isaiah Pacheco not out there. I think a lot of people are making the assumption that maybe they just run the ball more, and I think that is a reasonable assumption to make. If you want to lean into it, just say, hey, they probably aren't going to run as much with Carson Steele as they did with Isaiah Pacheco, and you want to just load up on pass catchers, assume that the Chiefs run it a ton. I think that's a totally viable way to play this slate. I'll probably play that way in some of my lineups. I'm going to be playing a lot of my lineups the opposite way also, and lean into the lower ownership on Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, et cetera. We'll get to that when we get to the running backs. But Mahomes, certainly viable. I would say he runs a little bit. I think he ran for 4 touchdowns 2 years ago. Didn't run for any last year, but ran over like 24 yards per game, something like that. He is. I always want to stack Mahomes. He came pretty close last year, I think, to being optimal on a showdown slate without stacking, just because he spread the ball around so much, did just enough on the ground. Like, he's almost viable, borderline viable as a play without any pass catchers in the flex. I would never play him in the in the captain spot without any pass catchers. If I have Mahomes in the captain spot, I always want to have at least one pass catcher in the flex, preferably multiple. Like he's just not that good of a pass catcher. So that is how I'm playing Mahomes, always stacking. Kirk Cousins, I like a little bit less than Mahomes. Again, you probably know what you're getting with Kirk Cousins. Doesn't run at all, just a total statue out there. Has pretty strong pass catching options. Much tougher matchup for Kirk Cousins than the matchup for Mahomes. I think the Chiefs defense is pretty legit. We've seen 2 games out of the Falcons. The first one, they got absolutely like shut down by the Steelers. The second game, they were much better against the Eagles. But I think the Steelers just have a really good defense. The Eagles much weaker in the secondary. I think that this Chiefs defense, my read on it is that it's closer to the Steelers end of things than the Eagles end of things. Could end up being totally wrong about that, but that is at least my read of this defense. So I'm not as bullish on Kirk Cousins, but again, you only get to choose from the players in this game. So I'm not going to be full fading Kirk Cousins, anything like that. But I might end up with under 50% Kirk Cousins. Would not be totally surprising. I have not made my lineups yet, so I don't know exactly, but my guess would be that I come in light on Kirk Cousins, like lighter than 50%. And let's see what does the field have here for Cousins. In the flex, we've got Cousins at nearly 40% ownership. Honestly, doesn't seem that bad. 5% in the captain spot. I mean, this is Aaron Rodgers all over again, right? We talked about this on that last slate, and that one, by the way, shout out to Adam Ship My Money, won that slate with Aaron Rodgers in the captain. We talked about that a good bit, that, usually people overplay the quarterbacks in the captain spot. On that slate, we had both quarterbacks coming in around like 5% or lower ownership. We talked about wanting to lean into the quarterbacks, and Adam actually took down the main slate with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So shout out to Adam for that one. That was really cool to see. But I think this is another spot where you could do the same thing. It's not the greatest spot against this Chiefs defense, but should be throwing quite a bit. Kirk Cousins also, again, kind of a statue. I am not going to play him naked ever. I'm always have at least one stacking partner with Kirk Cousins, no matter where he is in my lineup. If I have him in the captain spot, I want to have multiple pass catchers in the flex. That would include Bijan Robinson. Definitely qualifies as a pass catcher there. Just because of, and again, the nature of scoring on DraftKings. If you want to hit the nuts, it's very hard for the quarterback to be the optimal captain without multiple pass catchers, unless they are a running quarterback, because all of their points are accumulated through the air. And because of the nature of scoring on DraftKings, the pass catcher outscores the quarterback on every single play. So for the quarterback to outscore his pass catchers, he's going to need to be spreading the ball around. And typically then you want multiple pass catchers in the flex when you have the quarterback in the captain spot. That is what won on that Aaron Rodgers slate. Had, I think, 3 different pass catchers on the Jets in the flex, including Breece Hall. I think that generally that's the way you want to play. If you have Kirk Cousins in the captain spot, or Patrick Mahomes for that matter, you want multiple pass catchers in the flex typically. Gerardo asks, what tools are you using? So what you are seeing on the screen here, this is Lineup HQ from RotoGrinders. So this is the RotoGrinders optimizer. This is what I use exclusively for Showdown. I like this one quite a bit for Showdown. Pretty easy to set groups, set your salary minimum, all that kind of stuff. And of course has all of their data right here. You can see the projected ownership, fantasy points, etc. If you want access to this tool or anything on RotoRez, you can get $10 off using the link in the description of this video. If you're interested in checking it out, you also get access to, you can get access to all of the premium content where you would have seen today. My biggest stand of the day was Romo Dunze, my favorite contrarian play of the day on the expert survey today. So if you're interested in the RotoGrinders stuff, that's what I'm showing on the screen right now. That is in the link in the description of this video. But the other stuff that I'm looking here is all fantasy points, which you can also use promo code Flannelman. There's also, I think, a link, maybe not a link, maybe just use promo code Flannelman to get access to all these projections that I'm using for the Showdown slate are fantasy points, but then also the data suite, which is, in my opinion, the coolest thing they have there, where you can really dive deep into all of the advanced stats. And they have people who track every NFL game. They have a whole team of people tracking the games. They watch every single play to decide what qualifies as a target. For example, some places, if the quarterback throws it out of bounds, they will count that as a target. Fantasy Points looks at it and judges for themselves, like, was that actually a target, or was the quarterback just throwing it away? They have kind of different metrics, and I think it's really cool, really useful, this data suite. So if you are somebody who likes to dive deep into statistics, I'd highly recommend signing up for Fantasy Points as well. This is the data suite, so that would be the package you would want if you want to be diving deep into that stuff. All right, back to the analysis. I think I covered quarterbacks pretty well. I think 40% Kirk Cousins, honestly, in the flex seems kind of fine. Not overly concerned with that. I like him better though in the captain spot, which is a rare thing. Last year all the time we're talking about like quarterbacks. You generally want them better. You like them better in the flex. They go over-owned in the captain spot. Seems like the market has kind of corrected on that. And also quarterbacks are cheaper than ever, so more and more viable in the captain spot. So I think I'll probably be heavy overweight to the field on Kirk Cousins in the captain spot, probably around the 40% where the field is at in the flex. Running backs, again, I mean, this is not as straightforward. So I guess we should get into it with first of all, the Falcons is pretty straightforward. Bijan Robinson averaging 16 carries and 5 targets per game through 2 games this year. He has a great workload. You can probably expect that to continue. He is, he is game script proof because he's involved in both the passing game and the running game. Love me some Bijan. I think that he's probably the, independent of salary, independent of ownership, he would be the best play on the slate. Just on the Falcons at the very least. The projection is very strong on Bijan. He's going to have a very strong role. We kind of know what we're getting out of Bijan. You have to hope he finds the end zone, has a handful of targets. That kind of stuff can get him into the optimal pretty quickly. You do need to play at least one player from the Falcons. So if you're going like a Chiefs onslaught, of course, Bijan makes sense as just a guy who is going to get a good amount of volume, can PPR scam it a little bit. So yeah, into Bijan. Let's take a look at the ownership though. There would be, a level where maybe we're less interested. Projected for 18% captain ownership, it looks like. Let's look at the flex. 45% ownership in the flex, 18% in the captain spot. Doesn't seem too bad to me. That seems about fair for Bijan. Again, you need to play somebody from the Falcons. I think he is as good of a bet as anybody. That seems approximately where it should be for Bijan. So that's not going to be a place where I'm taking much of a stand. Probably going to be about even with the field on my Bijan exposure. I think he's a very, very strong play. Now here's where it gets in. Actually, no, I'll finish off the Falcons. So Tyler Algier is sort of interesting. He's 5,200 here. That's too expensive for Tyler Algier's role, but let's break it down by game at least. I guess we should, because the splits it was a little bit better last week than the week prior. So I do want to opponent. Let's at least take a look at how the role changed last week because it was better. Still, I mean, it's similar to, and I got this one not totally wrong because it actually didn't end up, he wasn't optimal, but Braylon Allen was a big fade for me the other day because I thought, well, he's 5,200. He's going to need to do more than you would expect for his role to pay that off. And he ended up not being optimal, but he very well could have been. The role was much better than I anticipated for that game. If he had found the end zone, he would have been optimal. So kind of lucked out that Braylon Allen didn't have an even better game than he did because he looked great, did get some opportunities, just didn't get into the end zone. Tyler Algier, a worse role than still. I think you can kind of make the same argument with Tyler Algier that I made with Braylon Allen, which is, well, they have a star running back in front of him. Like they're not going to use this guy a ton. Why would they use this guy? I think there is a difference though in that Braylon Allen, a rookie, looks really, really good. I mean, his stats so far this year have been phenomenal. So I think that's the reason they're playing Braylon Allen more than you might expect when they already have Breece Hall there. That was surprising to me how much they used him, but also he looked really good with his opportunities. We have more of a sample size that Tyler Algier is not as good as Braylon Allen. He was very good as rookie year, so I guess I don't want to completely write him off. But last year he was like 3.3 yards per carry, something really low like that. A little bit better this year, but with Bijan Robinson in front of him, I don't think Tyler Algier takes on a much bigger role than what he had last week, which was 9 carries, very good. Did run 4 routes. That's just 12.9% participation, 1 target in that game. I think Tyler Algier, so I almost want to say that you can't play them together, because really Tyler Algier is, what you really want is that contingent upside with Tyler Algier, because he's probably not going to be super involved with Bijan Robinson there. Now, you could, if you want to play it this way, you could think, well, maybe the Falcons try to slow down the game by running the ball quite a bit. In which case, if they do that, maybe Algier takes on a bigger role, even while Bijan is healthy. Bijan also taking on a bigger role. So maybe they take on a bigger role together. The pie gets a little bit bigger for the Falcons running game, as they're just trying to keep the ball on the ground, slow the game down so that the Chiefs offense can't just be on the field crushing them all game. That could be one way to play it if you wanted to play them together. And I think that's something I would at least consider. I might not make a rule to not play them together, but if I'm hand building and I want to put Tyler Algier in there, what I really want is that that continued upside of something happens to Bijan, he stubs his toe, hurt for 1 game, and Tyler Algier is the guy for that game. So it is kind of tough to play them together at their price tags. Bijan at 10,600, Algier at 5,200. It's pretty thin to play them together. That would be like only the largest field GPP I would even consider it. But in those largest field GPPs, I think you could sort of consider it's like borderline viable. I think Tyler Algier, though, probably a better play at 5,200, probably a better play in lineups without Bijan Robinson. All right, the Chiefs is where it gets interesting. And last I checked, and I looked into it quite a bit, I don't really think they've really tipped their hand on what they want to do exactly with the running backs. Between Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, we don't have much of a sample size of how they'll use them, but I think we can kind of just intuit that it's probably going to be Carson Steele as the lead back, and Samaje Perine as a pass catching back. That is how I'm interpreting what they're going to do. That's how I think that's the general consensus of what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to be using Samaje Perine much on like first down. I think generally it's going to be Carson Steele getting the first crack, at least early in the game. I think he'll get the first crack at that early down role. And if he does well enough, I think that he will hold on to that role for the entirety of the game. Whereas Samaje Perine, I think, will mostly be the passing down back, the hurry up offense back, that kind of stuff. That's where I think we'll see more of Samaje Perine. Now, I should look at, before we continue the analysis, let me look at the updated ownership on the running backs here. And we have, all right, where are we, guys? Let's see here. Sort by fantasy points. Carson Steele, okay, he's up to 27%, so that's a little bit higher than it was this morning. I think he was closer to 20%. So he has flipped Samaje Perine, and he's more expensive. Complicates things a little bit, but I still like the idea at this level of ownership. You tell yourself you have a $6,400 starting running back on the Chiefs coming in at 27% ownership. To me, that's a spot I'm going to lean into. There's obviously some possibility that he doesn't have that kind of workhorse role that I'm kind of hoping for with Carson Steele. Definitely possible that they're splitting carries, that they just go to the pass game more. But because the ownership is still pretty low, under 30% on Carson Steele in the flex spot, I'm going to lean into it. Just hope that, that Andy Reid, he sometimes does pull players out of nowhere. I'm kind of hopeful that he might just pull Carson Steele out of nowhere. Say, next man up, Carson Steele, you take on that Isaiah Pacheco role. And just imagine Isaiah Pacheco at 6,400 at sub 30% ownership. I'm in for that. I'm very much interested in that player. So probably not the most likely scenario that he takes on the full workload that we see 20 carries. But I'm at least willing to take a shot on it at low ownership on a showdown slate. I'm going to be overweight to Carson Steele in the flex. And I think also in the captain spot, last I looked, the ownership in the captain spot was really low on Carson Steele. Yeah, 4% projected ownership for a potential starting running back. Now, again, we don't know that he is, but better matchup for Carson Steele than Bijan Robinson. I don't think he's going to be too involved in the passing game. But all things considered, I'm just going to take a shot on Carson Steele. Hope that the Chiefs do use him more than we're expecting. And even if they don't, maybe he just finds himself in the end zone 1 to 2 times, short yards. I think he's probably the goal line back at the very least. So that is how I'm playing it. That's going to be, it's a difficult slate to get super unique on, with a lot of players, most players being pretty highly owned. But that is a place that I'm going to lean into, is that Chiefs run game. I do also think you can play him with Samaje Perine. I think Perine also a solid play at ownership. 3% projected ownership in the captain spot for Perine. In the flex, we just looked at it, also sub 30%. Did that wrong. So Perine, I think, also a strong play. I'm going to lean more into Carson Steele, but I probably end up close to the field on Perine also, at 27% projected ownership, 3% in the captain spot. Probably overweight to both of those also. I probably have more than that of Perine in the captain spot, more than this in the flex. We saw those. If we assume he's taking on the Jerick McKinnon role, we've seen Jerick McKinnon have some big games in this offense in that role. So if we do think that maybe Perine takes on a little bit more of a role than we're expecting, maybe he's capable of handling more than just those passing down plays. I think Perine, pretty strong play also. So Steele is my, I'm going to be more overweight there, but I'm probably going to be slightly overweight to Samaje Perine also. I don't think that I'm doing any Keontae Ingram. Again, we don't really know. He could be more involved than I'm expecting, but I haven't heard much from the coaches suggesting that Keontae Ingram is going to have any kind of real role here. Projects for sub 1 fantasy point. Maybe he's the guy who would get blowout run, because he's not one of the guys that they're planning on leading into. But he's 2,000, so even that is, needs to do something to pay that off. It's not like he's min priced. So I think he's not going to be somebody that I lean into. I don't feel super confident that he's not going to be involved at all, but I think that all indications are it's going to be Steele and Perine. So I'm going to lean into those two. If it's a Keontae Ingram game, then we'll look forward to the 2 game slate tomorrow. So for me, not getting into Keontae Ingram, but I like the others. All right. I think that is enough about the running backs. Wide receivers, Rashee Rice really is taking that next step forward this year. Fun to see him with that 41-yard touchdown last week, taking on a bigger role, not just a PPR scam anymore. He was really good last year. I didn't even realize. I watched so many Chiefs games and thought he was fine, but he seemed more like a safety valve to me than anything. And turns out his yards per route run, his underlying metrics were pretty good last year. And this year, just continuing on that path, looking really good. He's 9,600. Really strong play there. But let's take a look at the ownership on Rashee Rice. In the flex, 42%. Yeah, that seems honestly pretty low to me. I like that number on Rashee Rice. I guess I should say, as much as I like the quarterbacks, I think this is a slate where I will have some lineups where I don't have either of the quarterbacks. There are a lot of slates where I think I'm just always playing a quarterback. I think this is one where you could at least consider playing more of the stars without the quarterbacks and just hope that it is. Mahomes has 15 fantasy points, but Rashee Rice has 20 and Kelce has 18, and just like the other stars outshine them and score a little bit more. So this will be a slate where I don't have a quarterback in every single lineup. I'm still going to have a good amount of both quarterbacks, but just wanted to note that we do have enough stars in this game that I think have the ability to outscore the quarterbacks, that I might have some lineups there that don't have either of them. But again, 42% projected ownership in the flex spot for Rashee Rice. And then in the captain spot, we've got Rice at 16%. That's probably a little bit higher than I'd like it to be. I think I'll probably be a little bit light on that. I don't know. Maybe that's fine. That's probably about where it should be. We could obviously see a touchdown 100-yard game with 8 receptions for Rashee Rice and nobody would be shocked. Maybe 16% is about right on Rashee Rice. Marco, I think 9,600 for Rashee Rice. I don't know. On a 1-game slate, I think it's fine. I don't think it's too crazy there. Xavier Worthy is just 8,000, does not project well at all for 8,000, 10.6 projection at 8,000. You can see he's projected about the same as Darnell Mooney, who is significantly cheaper. Ray McLeod projects for 8.8. So projection wise, Xavier Worthy not projecting really well here. Now let's see if that 10.6 here, what does Rotograndis have him at? You can see little differences in the sites. Yeah, so RotoGrinders has him at 13.24. So then you see the projected ownership a little bit higher, 25.5 projected ownership in the flex on Xavier Worthy. If they had also had him at 10%, my guess is we would have that ownership coming in pretty light. At which point, I would say, "Hey, screw it. Let's just lean into Xavier Worthy. 5% projected ownership in the flex. Sorry, in the captain spot. I think Xavier Worthy is, has not gotten a ton of looks so far in his career. He has 5. What does he have? 5 total. Let's see his numbers on the year. 7 targets on the year, 4 receptions, I believe just 2 carries. Now he's done really well with those 2 carries. So not super involved so far, but we know he can do a lot with the ball in his hands. He is, again, fastest combine score in NFL history. I do like Xavier Worthy quite a bit. You would expect, because he's been so good when he has had the ball in his hands, that they're going to give him the ball more going forward. So I really like Xavier Worthy despite the not particularly great projection. The ownership is fairly low there. Again, we had it at about 25% in the captain spot. Sorry, in the flex, I'm misspeaking here. We have Xavier Worthy at 25.5% in the flex, and then around 5% in the captain spot. Neither of those strikes me as wrong. It seems that this is a place where I think there could be, when you look at projections, when you look at sims, a lot of input volatility in Xavier Worthy, because we have a very small sample size. We don't really know what to expect. Things change over time. So, looking at numbers around the industry, it's funny. It's fascinating seeing how different they can be, because we have such a small sample size and he is such an interesting player. So I think the ownership is actually totally fine at 30%. He could be, there's a wide range of outcomes there. So he could really disappoint you at this salary. If he does only touch the ball 3 times and doesn't happen to get into the end zone, could be a big disappointment. I think on the other hand, though, this could be the game where finally they get Xavier Worthy a little bit more involved. He touches the ball 8 times, scores 2 touchdowns. That doesn't shock anybody. So I think 30% total ownership feels totally fine to me. Yeah, Worthy on turf, just gonna light things up potentially. Outside of those two, on the Chiefs, we have Justin Watson as the next most interesting to me. Juju Smith-Schuster, we did see had, I think does he have multiple? He might have multiple end zone looks. Actually, let's take a look at that. So we have Justin Watson at 2,800, Juju Smith-Schuster at 2,200. Now, I haven't given a ton of thought to Juju, but maybe I need to consider him a little bit. So 16% route participation on the year for Juju. Just the 1 end zone target. He has been the first read on 1 target this year. He has 1 target this year. Okay, so that is why I have not given a ton of thought to Juju until now, and now I'm reconsidering. Mahomes did try to get him the end zone, tried to force the ball to Juju in the end zone. That is the kind of thing you might see on a showdown slate. So I don't want to completely write off Juju at low ownership. Let's pull up the ownership numbers here. And then Justin Watson has basically the exact same role as last year, running, just sub 50% of routes, doesn't get targeted a ton, could just have that long play. He's kind of a splash play guy, has that 1 splash play for a touchdown. Suddenly you want him in your lineup. That's exactly who Justin Watson is. There's probably, a 12% chance of that happening. If you look over the course of his career, how often that happens, it's probably about right. And that's probably about what his ownership should be. I think he'll be a little bit lighter than that. So I do think that he's a pretty solid large field tournament play. Let's see, Justin Watson. Yeah, it doesn't project that well. About 12. Okay, that's exactly where it's projected, his ownership. So seems about right, about 12% ownership. I do like Justin Watson better than Noah Gray. So look at them. They have almost the exact same projection, almost the exact same ownership projection. Just looking at their game logs. Let's just pull those up real quick, because I know you don't really want to read too much into past game logs. But I think if, historically, we have not seen Noah Gray ever really do it with Travis Kelce out there. I think it could happen. But Justin Watson, just looking at his game log from last year, you had this game with 16.3 PPR fantasy points, another game with 13.8. I think that he has more of that kind of output in his bag than Noah Gray does. So that is going to be my lean of the two of them. Now I'm pulling up Noah Gray's game log. We'll go PPR 2023. Because both of them have pretty similar roles to what they had last year. Noah Gray's best game last year, 10.4. Again, we saw multiple games, 13.8, like 15, whatever it was for Justin Watson, a little bit better last year. Really small sample size, so I don't want to read too much into it. But in a case here where, again, they're coming in at about the same ownership, same projection, I'll play the guy that has the more the higher upside there that we've actually seen in Justin Watson. So he would be my preference between Watson and Noah Gray. Not a huge preference, but thought that was worth noting because they are really close in price, really close in projection, close in ownership, et cetera, et cetera. So my preference, if you're just going to one of them, would be Justin Watson. Juju Smith-Schuster, again, just a hope for a touchdown. Maybe they force a touchdown to Juju Smith-Schuster, at which case that low ownership, I assume, let me look. Yeah, 2.5% projected ownership. At that ownership, I think that's totally fine. Maybe play 1 in 20 lineups. Suddenly you have 5%. That's double the field. If you want to take a bigger stand than that, totally fine. But I think he's really just a touchdown or bust kind of play. I don't think he's going to start taking on a bigger role. Maybe it surprises me. Maybe Mahomes wants him out there more, but not my expectation when we have 2 games where that has not happened yet. Falcons, yeah, Drake London. Honestly, the numbers have been pretty poor for the Falcons so far in terms of like anybody separating from the pack. So this is just looking at their overall wide receivers and tight ends. We have 12 targets for Ray McLeod, which doesn't feel sustainable, but he's been, I think he's had a few at least in both games. He had a ton week 1, and then he had at least a few in week 2 also. Drake London, just 10 targets, doesn't really separate. Darnell Mooney, 9. Kyle Pitts, 6. Charlie Warner, 2. Just nobody really separating from the pack here. And that does kind of concern me. Now, they do have that one game against Pittsburgh that I think really brings down the numbers here. But, not feeling great about these numbers. Maybe let's split it out again by week, by opponent. So we had Darnell Mooney, 6 targets in week 2. So he jumped from 3 to 6. So like to see that. Drake London from 3 to 7 in week 2. So they all were more involved in week 2. So maybe it was just the Steelers kind of suppressing them. Okay, yeah, this is a split. Ray McLeod, 7 targets week 1, 5 in week 2. Like you like the consistency there. Maybe he has more of a role than anybody was expecting coming into the year. I don't know. I guess because we had the numbers come up a little bit last week, maybe they just took the Falcons a game to get going. I don't like them as much as I don't like these receiving options as much as the Chiefs guys, because I think the ownership is going to be there, and I think there is a lot of room for failure on the Falcons. But let's look at the projected ownership here. Yeah, I guess Drake London is just at 31%. That seems fine. That's not much more than Xavier Worthy, 31% in the flex. We'll talk about Kyle Pitts when we get to the tight ends. Darnell Mooney, 22%. Ray McLeod, 28%. It's tough because I want to get away from Ray McLeod, but he's only 3,600 and he has 12 targets already this year. So that price is too low for what we've seen so far from Ray McLeod. And it's not like the ownership is 50%, still seems kind of reasonable. I'm struggling, honestly, with what to do with the Falcons receivers. I don't think any of them really stand out. I think it comes down to who happens to score a touchdown, who happens to have the long plays. I still think Drake London at 30% ownership probably is fine. I was expecting it to be a little bit higher than that. So probably Drake London is my favorite. Give me 1 second. Looks like my camera is... All right. Maybe I just won't use that camera. Drake London's still probably my favorite. Darnell Mooney, good to see that he was a little bit more involved last week. Obviously, he has those long plays. He has that in his bag of tricks. So I like Darnell Mooney some. Ray McLeod, I don't know. It's a tough spot. I think we kind of all know what's going on there with Ray McLeod. I think I lean to just kind of staying with the field on Ray McLeod. I think I'd be Darnell Mooney I'd rather play Darnell Mooney at 22% than Ray McLeod at 28%. I think there is a little bit of a salary difference there. But yeah, I think I rank Ray McLeod third because I think most likely Darnell Mooney by the end of the year is the wide receiver 2 here, and he's coming at lower ownership. So yeah, I think I would rank them Drake London, then Darnell Mooney, then Ray McLeod. That's also their salaries. But I'm saying even including the salaries, that is my preference, my ranking preference. But I think they're all kind of priced about where they should be. Like I would have loved for Ray McLeod to be 6,000 here because of the role he's had so far. That just isn't the case. So I think I like them in the order that I expect them to be. Kind of the standard order there, with Drake London being the number 1 there. All right. Anybody else? I'm not playing any Kadero Hodge, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman. I think if I were going to play any kind of borderline receiver, for me it would be Juju Smith-Schuster. Let me double check the numbers here though. Kadero Hodge not even showing up here, so don't think you need to worry about Kadero Hodge. Charlie Warner we can talk about when we get to tight ends. Any other Chiefs to worry about? Nope. Sky Moore, three routes run. Yeah, we can ignore, I think, the second the more tertiary options on both offenses in terms of receivers. Tight ends, Travis Kelce only projects for 11 fantasy points at 8,200. The ownership last I checked on Kelce is fairly low. Yeah, 32% projected ownership in the flex for Travis Kelce. Did that wrong. And then the captain spot, Travis Kelce, 6%. That's going to be one of my biggest leans on the slate, is a lot more Travis Kelce than the field, both in the captain spot and in the flex. I'm going to be going pretty heavy on Travis Kelce. He hasn't hit yet this year. If you look at Sam Sherman did a nice post on Travis Kelce where he looked at all of his snaps for the past 2 games and basically came to the conclusion that he's had several plays. Like there was 4 plays in there that it's like he was this close to a touchdown. Mahomes just missed him. There was a penalty, et cetera, et cetera. Like things have not gone Travis Kelce's way so far this year, or I think he's actually had some drops also. I think that's going to turn around at some point. Travis Kelce is going to be the guy again. Wouldn't be that shocked to see Mahomes try to get him involved with the spotlight on for Sunday Night Football. So for me, Travis Kelce, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to be well overweight to the field. That's going to be one of my biggest stands. Travis Kelce, remember me game. I think that we could see it tonight. That's kind of my expectation. I feel like I've been really bad at my choices for the star players so far on these slates. I think I've done a pretty good job of like naming the more secondary, tertiary guys who go off. But the star players, Rome Odunze the other week didn't go off at all. I don't know. I can't remember all of them, but I feel like it has been less good there. Whereas I've been better with the secondary players here. Travis Kelce is the guy that I expect to be wrong about. I'm going to lean into it. I think that there's a good shot that Travis Kelce gets more involved. If you want to fade my favorite star players, then Kelce would be the one to fade here. Kyle Pitts, 7,000, 8.2. Again, pretty bad point per dollar play here. Does not project well at all. Point per dollar. You look at his ownership though. Kyle Pitts at 3% in the captain spot. 21% in the flex. People have alluded to it in chat a couple times already. We've seen a couple blow up games for tight ends against the Chiefs already this year. We first had Isaiah Likely go completely off in week 1 against the Chiefs. Week 2, then we had Mike Gesicki go completely off. And then the 2 other like backup tight ends on the Bengals also had pretty nice games. So we have just seen the number of fantasy points. If you look at like DraftKings fantasy points allowed to the tight end position so far this year, the Chiefs are just lapping the field coming into the year. Could be that they're just trying to, take away the best players, and Isaiah Likely and Mike Gesicki are the players that they wanted to allow to get the ball. So who knows if they feel the same way about Kyle Pitts? Maybe they'll put more focus on stopping Kyle Pitts than they have past tight ends. But I think it's at least interesting to note that they've been really bad so far against the tight end position. I could see that continuing here. I'm going to continue wish casting Kyle Pitts. So Kelce the bigger stand for me, but honestly, this ownership on Kyle Pitts sub 25% is it's pretty low. He's only 7,000. I understand it because he's been really bad. So maybe he's just not the player that we have been hoping that he is. But at this level of ownership, I think I'll be overweight to Kyle Pitts. So ultimately, I think I'm going to be basically heavier on Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts, and then a little bit lighter on most of at least the Falcons receivers. I think I'll probably be a little bit light on certainly Ray McLeod, maybe Drake London. I like Darnell Mooney. I like his ownership number, so I'll probably be overweight there. But I think the Ray McLeod and probably Drake London, I'll be a little bit lighter and play into the tight ends a little bit more there. Talked about Noah Gray. He's fine. He'll be out there. Scores a touchdown. He'll pay off his price tag. If he doesn't, he probably won't. I prefer Justin Watson if I'm choosing between the two of them. I think that's good enough breakdown of Noah Gray. Jared Wiley, 400 projects for 1.4. What has he done? I don't know that Jared Wiley has done that much. 8 total routes run, 12.9% each week. Has 1 target, 4 errors. Let's see here. Was he the first read on that one? He was the first read on his 1 target this season. Again, similar to Noah Gray, if his target is in the end zone and he catches it, you're probably going to want him. He's 400, so he would pay off his price tag even easier than Noah Gray. Maybe I actually prefer him over Noah Gray too. So maybe Noah Gray is a guy that you should play if you think that the guys that I like or that the guys that I don't like are going to go off. Because I'm not playing a ton of Noah Gray. I think I'd rather play Justin Watson. I think I would rather play Noah Wiley. Also, thank you for that reminder, Mr. England. Please do hit the like button. I am trying to grow the channel. If you've not already subscribed, that's another big way to help. I'm trying to grow the channel. We are at close to 3,000 subscribers for the channel, hoping to get to 5,000 by the end of the summer. Short-term goal 3,000. Eventually I'm going to bump that up to 5,000. So I would appreciate if you have not already subscribed, please do subscribe. Of course, like the video, commenting, all of that is very helpful. I've really appreciated all of your support so far, and that is how you can continue if you would like to support me. Charlie Warner, we did see has been on the field a little bit. Projection of 0.9 at 800 doesn't give a ton of confidence here, but let's see what are the did something wrong here. 8 total routes run. He did have 6 in week 1, only 2 in week 2. So kind of took a step back there in week 2. Wasn't targeted in week 2. Kind of similar where if he scores a touchdown, you'll probably want him. I think I'm fading Charlie Warner, but there's that risk that if he does score a touchdown, he's 800, probably pays off the price tag, but probably not going there for me. Also just realized I'm doing the thing again where I did not move this down to running backs, receivers, tight ends. We've done all of those already. Let's go to defenses and kickers. I think the Falcons are going to go a little bit under-owned. I like them. I like the Falcons quite a bit. Mahomes did throw like 14 interceptions last year. I think a $3,200 Falcons defense. Mahomes obviously great, and several of those interceptions last year were not really his fault. It was drops by the receiver, bounce off their hands into somebody else's hands. They get the interception. Happened quite a bit last year. Can happen again this year. Now, probably better receivers this year, so maybe those numbers go down a little bit. But at low ownership, at a low price tag, I think the Falcons are a pretty strong bet. And let's again look at the ownership here on the Falcons in the flex. 6% at 3,400. I mean, are the other players around them that much more likely to outscore them? I mean, we have Ray McLeod is 3,600, so slightly more expensive. He's 28% owned, and the Falcons defense is 6%. I like that. I think that is a really strong number for the Falcons. My guess is that ownership number is a little bit light. Some, probably more people than me, want to play a defense at 3,400. Yeah, I think I have some interest there in the Falcons defense. That's a place where I will be significantly overweight to the field. The Chiefs defense is, hang on, where's the ownership here? It's a better spot. So I think they're a better defense. They have a better matchup. All of that for the Chiefs. Also projected for 6% ownership. They are more expensive, 4,400. I like that even better. I mean, so I thought they were going to come in a little bit higher owned. That is not what they're projecting for. Let me double check some industry sources, because I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. This all seems okay. Other places do have both of them more like in that kind of 15% range that I kind of thought that I had seen earlier when I was looking. So I do think they probably, my guess is that they come in at least closer to that, maybe 10%, whatever, somewhere around there. But still, I think really strong play. I think this Chiefs defense is really good. We saw the Steelers shut down the Falcons. I think they could cause some turnovers, certainly some sacks on Kirk Cousins. So I really like the Chiefs defense, but I also think if one of these defenses does stay under 10% owned, around the 6% number, I think the Falcons are definitely the more likely to, just because nobody wants to play a defense against Patrick Mahomes. So for me, defenses, both really strong plays. Yeah, I think, oh man, Youngway, it's Youngway. Is that right? I forget how to pronounce this now. 21.5% projected ownership seems fine to me. I think I typically prefer the kicker on the team that I expect to win. So I think Butker to me looks even a little bit better, a little bit lighter ownership, only slightly more expensive. And I think the Chiefs, I guess the game is in Atlanta. So maybe they can keep up, but kickers, I think, strong plays. The ownership seems fine to me there. They are coming in at reasonable ownership there, so I'm not going out of my way to go crazy over the field there. But I think both strong-ish plays. Let me take a sip of water. I got a frog in my throat. Lily asks, kind of a personal question: did you choose to go solo, or did none of the sites want you working for them? You were always my favorite. So I actually am working for several sites. I'm not full-time anywhere, but I'm doing a good amount of work for Roto Grinders, 4for4, and Fantasy Points, as well as my solo channel. So yeah, nobody had I talked about going full-time with one place. Another place offered me a position where I would have been their director of DFS. And I turned that one down because I didn't like the idea of most of my content would have been behind a paywall, and I wanted to continue to be doing stuff that is more public facing, free stuff like this, because I really enjoy doing these shows. Didn't really want all my work behind the paywall. So it was partially a decision. The site that I talked to about going full-time didn't ultimately have a full-time position for me. So sort of my own decision, sort of nobody really was hiring full-time. But I'm honestly very happy with my current setup, doing work different places around the industry, some of it behind a paywall, getting paid for that, and then getting to do what I love here on my own channel is honestly pretty sweet for me. So no complaints on my end. All right. Any questions? We'll get to the questions and lineups part of the show, where I will start playing around with some lineups here. But if you have any questions for me, happy to answer those as well. And I'll pull up DraftKings. So I guess to the final conclusion. So some of my favorite plays: Travis Kelce, Carson Steele, I think are going to be big parts of my night. Both defenses, I think, are going to be big parts of my night. I think those are kind of my biggest stands. Now, maybe I had some others I'm forgetting here. Bijan Robinson, obviously, but everybody's going to play Bijan Robinson. I'm not sure if there are more there that I'm missing. Appreciate it, Tom. Oh yeah, FanDuel thoughts. I can give you that. I don't think you're an idiot for always picking captains from the underdog. I think it'll work out eventually. Probably it's gonna work out less often than picking captains from the favorite probably, but when it hits, it'll probably be a little bit lower owned. Here, let's do a quick look at FanDuel for Dan. So let me pull that up real quick. All right, so starting with MVP on FanDuel. Again, this is all Roto Grinders numbers here. You can check it out. The link is in the description if you're interested. They have Patrick Mahomes at 33% projected ownership in the MVP spot. That's too much for me. I would be lighter than that. I think there's a pretty reasonable shot that somebody outscores him. You see quarterbacks. I've talked about this on past shows, but you see quarterbacks go probably a little bit over-owned in the MVP spot on FanDuel because optimizers want to give you the quarterback in the MVP spot because they're the highest projection. So whenever the quarterback makes it into a lineup with an optimizer, they're just going to say, okay, the quarterback is the highest projected player. The MVP scores the most points. There's no salary multiplier, so they throw the quarterback into the MVP spot. As a result, you get quarterbacks a little bit overrepresented in the MVP spot. Now, worth noting, because there is no salary multiplier, you need the player that is in your MVP spot to be the highest scoring player in your lineup, if you want to like win the tournament. So I think there's definitely more than a 66% chance, 67% chance that somebody else outscores Patrick Mahomes. So I would be light on Mahomes here. Bijan, I think I like that a little bit better at 21%, but I often like just getting a little bit contrarian in the MVP spot. And that's where, Travis Kelce at 3.6%. Would it shock any of us if Travis Kelce has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns tonight? That would not shock me at all. So I think on FanDuel, I like the idea of, don't go to the guys who don't have any shot at being the highest scoring player on the slate. You probably want the highest scoring player on the slate. I think maybe occasionally the pricing works out that you don't necessarily need the highest scoring in your lineup if there's a better lineup that doesn't include the highest scoring if they're just slightly, but generally you need the highest scoring player on the slate to be in your lineup and in the MVP spot. That's going to be the case 99% of the time. So I wouldn't go to I don't know what the best example here. Sometimes it is kickers. I don't know if I would do it on this slate. I think it's probably going to be a position player. Probably could work out, but like Justin Watson, I don't think it's worth it to play Justin Watson in the MVP spot here. I think the odds are just too low that he makes it in, or Noah Gray. You don't want to go that far off the beaten path. But I think I just gave my favorite example here would be Travis Kelce. I think totally realistic that Travis Kelce is the highest scoring player on the slate, coming in at 3.6% ownership. Carson Steele, same thing. If he does take on that Isaiah Pacheco role, nobody's going to go there. He's only 8,500. You want people, lean toward playing their expensive guys there. I think Carson Steele probably goes a little bit overlooked, and he also could score 100 yards and a touchdown and maybe 2 touchdowns, and he is the leading scorer at low ownership in the MVP spot. Xavier Worthy doesn't need that many touches to have a couple touchdowns, as we've seen. So these are the types of plays that I really like in the MVP spot. The guys who you can see, like, it's totally viable to think that they could be the highest scoring player on the slate, and they're coming in at really low ownership. You'd really set yourself apart if you have them in that MVP spot. So those are some of my favorite MVPs. And then still getting used to this. Favorite flex. Again, I'll sort by ownership here. See a little bit higher here. As you might expect, it's not PPR like DraftKings. Ray McLeod coming in a little bit lighter ownership here. Don't hate that. Darnell Mooney, pretty interesting. Pirine. So we had Steele come in higher. Pirine could, we expect him to be just the passing game back, the hurry up offense kind of back. He could get more carries than we're expecting. He is like the veteran back on the team. So even though I'm leaning into Carson Steele on FanDuel, I don't hate this. Hate the idea of just playing it like, well, what if Pirine is just we want to give the veteran the ball. Carson Steele not really getting the job done. Let's just give it to Pirine. I don't hate the idea of Pirine on FanDuel at 16% ownership. Justin Watson looks pretty good. 8% ownership on FanDuel. I like that. Again, both defenses. I mean, really, really low ownership projected for the defenses. Juju, another one I don't feel strong. Again, he's like they might throw him the ball once in the end zone. If he catches it, they'll pay it off. And you'd want to have him. He's 6,000, so I think probably the best 6,000 option. But Justin Watson, I think pretty strong. 8% ownership on FanDuel. I like that. Again, both defenses. I mean, really low ownership projected for the defenses. Juju, another one I don't feel strong. Again, he's like they might throw him the ball once in the end zone. If he catches it, they'll pay it off. And you'd want to have him. He's 6,000, so I think probably the best 6,000 option. Yeah, Don't totally hate the idea of Juju. Pretty thin, pretty unlikely to hit. Pitts really low. I mean, 10,000 coming in at 17% ownership. I kind of like that too. So those are some general thoughts on FanDuel. If you have any other specific questions, happy to answer them. On DraftKings, so we've talked about it. I like the idea of just going to Travis Kelce in the captain spot. Could immediately go to Mahomes. Maybe I'll wait on Mahomes a bit. Putting Carson Steele here. Maybe I do one where I lean completely into Chiefs domination. I think that's one of the ways I'm going to play this slate is just what if the Chiefs absolutely dominate? And I think one way to do it that would be still kind of unique is playing that Kelce in the captain spot. Now you still maybe want Mahomes. Maybe you want one more pass catcher with them. That could be Rashee Rice. It could be Xavier Worthy. Could even be like a kicker. Now here we have enough to pay for Drake London. So this would be, in a smaller field contest, I would probably just, or if you're not worried about dupes, you could go to Drake London there. But I like the idea of just going down to what if you go to Kyle Pitts instead? Leaving 19 on the table. Would anybody be shocked if Kyle Pitts outscores Drake London? Maybe you would be, but I think it's within the realm of possibility. Now we're leaving 1,900 on the table. Going to be a lot less duped. So for a large field tournament, I'd be more inclined to leave that salary on the table, hope that Pitts could outscore Drake London, just as an example. You'd also need Xavier Worthy to outscore Drake London. I think it's totally within he has, I think, 9 targets. I forget what it was, 9 or 10 targets on the year so far. Certainly possible for Drake London to fail against a very good Chiefs defense. So I think just going a little bit lower on those price tags, totally viable. Let's try another one. Let's go Carson Steele at captain. Now it's kind of obvious, but I think a lot of people will go, and I think it's viable to just go immediately to Chiefs defense then in the flex. But I'll do the obvious here. I'll go Chiefs defense. Here's where I'll get a little bit different is I don't think a lot of people will play Steele in the captain spot and also have Samaje Perine in there. I think it's viable though. I think Steele could, have 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown and be the captain that you want. Maybe even adds a reception or two. And then Perine just has 5 receptions for 40 yards, or maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe you need more than that for 5,400, but 6 receptions for 60 yards. So whatever it is, would pay off this price tag. I think that is possible for the Chiefs just to say, we're just going to pound the rock with both of these running backs. Now we have 10,200 left per player. Maybe throw in, maybe assume that the Falcons are throwing a lot late. Go to Kirk Cousins, Drake London. Now we have 12,800 left over. Now even we could play Bijan here. So we have pretty unique lineup with Steele in the captain spot, Perine and the Chiefs. Really kind of betting against the Chiefs stars in this lineup, which I don't totally love, but maybe they do. Maybe they just keep the ball on the ground. Then the Falcons are trying to keep up with their star players. You're leaving 2,200 on the table. Borderline viable here. Maybe I'd prefer it if I put in another Chiefs player here. Maybe instead of Drake London, we go to Rashee Rice. But I think this is fine large field GPP lineups here. Anything, I'll get back to chat, see if you guys have specific thoughts on the type of build you want to see. All right, scrolling up a little bit. Looks like I missed some stuff. Yeah, that's the thing. It can happen on DraftKings, but it could also happen FanDuel pretty easily. Again, on FanDuel, it's easier for those low-owned or lower-owned plays to just keep up with the stars because it's not full PPR. Really don't need as much volume to keep up with the star players. So totally viable on both sides. I won a FanDuel slate a couple of years ago with Justin Watson, actually, just really low ownership. Had a blow-up game on a single-game slate on FanDuel, and he won me a big tournament. So you get those low-owned cheap guys are often in those winning lineups. All right, let's see here. I think both. It could be either the low-owned captain or the 1% guy who catches a touchdown. A lot of different ways to win it. And, we saw the one that Adam won just last week. We saw several sharp players had that lineup, won 25,000. It was, I think, 500,000 first. So it was split several ways, but they still won good enough money that they're happy with it. And there was nothing all that weird about their lineups. It was Aaron Rodgers in the captain spot with with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Alan Lazard, which was a little bit low owned. Pop Douglas, not that low owned. Jets defense. I think that was the lineup. Like nothing, you don't really need to always get that crazy to win a significant amount of money. You can, of course, win more money if you do get those 1% guys. But yeah, you don't always need to do that. All right. I'm considering throwing my single entry lineup in the big $15, but I'd love to know how many thousands of people I'd be holding hands with. If you want to give me the lineup, I could try to guess, but I don't calculate dupes that way, that specifically. But if you want to throw it to me, I'd be happy to try. Yeah, that could be maybe. I mean, that's kind of what I'm banking on too, is Carson Steele being the guy. Yeah, definitely in on Kelce at captain. Let's see. I mean, they were a play away from losing to the Bengals last week. Yeah, I wouldn't say they've been dominant. Let's see. Yeah, I've seen some quotes along these lines. Devin says Brett Veach said Steele is as ready as any rookie could be for a heavy workload. Again, they played it sort of close to the chest, but they have said I've seen quotes like that they think he's ready. Maybe they lean on him. That's the hope, at least. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to go heavy Falcons build, that will be different. They are at home, so maybe a little bit more viable than if it was in Kansas City. How much salary do we leave to be contrarian? Leave 1,000. You're probably avoiding at least the heaviest dupe lineups. Yeah, Devin says 48,800. That seems good. In years past, honestly, my best years, I was leaving 1,800 on the table. Was like my max salary was 48,200. That's what I would set it at when I had multiple 6-figure wins in Showdown. But I think it's gotten tougher where those lineups are more likely to be duped. So I don't know that the EV is quite there anymore. So I've actually loosened it up where I do play lineups where I'm only leaving 1,000 on the table, sometimes 800 on the table, that kind of stuff. Because I think that the scales, it's flipped a little bit where enough people are duping those kind of lineups that the EV isn't quite as good. Now, this is all just kind of loosey-goosey math. I have not actually run any kind of sims to tell me this, but that's kind of my feeling, is that I'm actually leaving less salary on the table because I think there's more EV in those. All right, let's see. Get rid of the spam. All right, I think, is KC defense viable in the captain? I think so, yeah. Let's see, what is the ownership on Kansas City defense in the captain spot? My guess is very low. Oh, I'm on FanDuel here. Probably more viable on DraftKings just because there is a salary multiplier, so you don't need them to be the highest scoring play on the slate. Sub 1% ownership, Chiefs at captain. Yeah, that seems like a good number to me. I think that it's possible. Like this could just be kind of a slow-paced slugfest kind of game where the Chiefs are keeping the ball on the ground a good amount. The Falcons, again, we saw them get completely shut down by the Steelers just 2 weeks ago. I think that could happen again. It's at least within the range of outcomes. So yeah, I think Steelers defense. Actually, let's build one of those. Maybe that would be one of my last ones. All right. See you later, Danny. Okay. Let's build a lineup with Chiefs defense at captain. See how that looks. So we have 86.80 left per player. Now maybe we go right to Harrison Butker. We just want to play for like a really low scoring game. You're kind of hoping for at least one touchdown for the Chiefs defense. But maybe they have another takeaway where it's like they get the ball back already in scoring position. That helps Harrison Butker. Debating whether I like Harrison Butker in this. throw in another steal. And then if the Chiefs defense gets there, maybe we just want PPR scams the rest of the way. So maybe this is where we want Bijan, Rashee Rice, and Kelce. Now this one leaving 3,600 on the table. You're needing the Chiefs defense to outscore. I think Carson Steele probably could fit in there. Can't do the math in my head, but yeah, I think that's the only one that you would need to, let's see, Steele in the captain. Yeah, so Carson Steele would fit in there with the Chiefs defense. So you need, of the players in your lineup, you would only need the Chiefs defense to outscore Carson Steele because nobody else would be able to fit into the captain spot, I believe. But then you also need, so this one again, leaving 3,600 on the table. So you need every single player in your lineup to outscore everybody else up to 3,600 more. So Butker up to 8,600. So Butker would need to outscore Xavier Worthy, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney. I think that's viable. So this is one super large field GPP only. We're leaving 3,600 on the table. Very unlikely to win. But here's an example of, I think, a lineup that could win with the Chiefs defense. They have, a pick six, couple turnovers, few sacks. They put up a decent score, but it's a pretty low scoring game. So the other guys who get there are maybe Steele has one touchdown. Maybe he's somebody you'd rather have a PPR kind of guy too. So you could, another version of this would be maybe instead of Steele, go to another guy who would be more of a PPR scam. Go to Drake London, could be that guy. Maybe this looks a little bit more viable, where it's just Chiefs defense does really well, low scoring game. Then the rest of the players in your lineup are the guys who are just getting there, maybe without scoring a lot, but just getting there on volume instead of quarterbacks. All right. Oh yeah. Camera is out. Thank you for noting that. I need to get going in a second here to make my lineups because we got about 20 minutes left. Yeah, would not be duped, that's for sure. Anyone I like under 2,400. Let me look. Sean, I did not look at the numbers. I mean, I don't love Juju Smith-Schuster. He's at least sort of borderline viable. Similarly, Jared Wiley, I think, might be out there a couple plays. There's nobody great under 2,400. You're all kind of just betting on random touchdown there. Probably not the route that I'm going. Sean, yeah, sorry, I didn't look at the man versus zone stuff for Atlanta. I'm going to start looking at that stuff, I think, more after week 4 when we have the data on fantasy points. They're going to update all of their stuff after week 4. So that's when I think I'll start looking closer at the man versus zone stuff. For now, I'm mostly interested in usage, but maybe I'll look a little bit closer at that point. But yeah, that's good call out. All right, that is going to do it for the show. Again, appreciate all of you for hanging out with me for the duration of the show. If you have not already subscribed, would appreciate it. Trying to get to 3,000 in the short term, 5,000 by the end of the year. So would appreciate that. Like the video, subscribe, and comment. All that is really helpful for me. Good luck, everybody. And tomorrow, we'll have 2 games tomorrow. Haven't figured out exactly what I'm doing. I think we're skipping the morning show because Adam can't make it. And then I think I'll just do a solo show. Not sure exactly when that's going to start, what we're going to cover. If it's going to be Showdown, if it's going to be the 2-game slate. So you can let me know what you'd prefer there. But I'll be doing that at some point tomorrow. All right. Thanks, guys. And let's win some money tonight.